Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, Bob Przybylo here from the Soonerscoop.com studios on Campus Quarter, and a lot going on, obviously. George was in here yesterday. We were talking about the Caden Green transfer stuff. Went a little bit more in-depth into it on the Unofficial 40. You can find that on all your podcast platforms. But right here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube page, it's time for the Sooner Hoop Report, the Hoops Report with the great Bob Przybylo. Oklahoma 9-0 now, coming off of a 79-70 victory in Tulsa over the weekend at the BOK Center, Bob. And before we get into the OU Arkansas stuff, a big one coming up with North Carolina next week, actually, a week from today out in Charlotte. But really good offer right now for the YouTube viewer like yourself out there. 2 months, $1. For Soonerscoop.com. Just use promo code OU1. That is 2 months, $1, promo code OU1, and a lot going on, obviously, with everything ramping up into bowl season. The bowls actually kick off on Saturday. I think there's 6 of them, Bob. And then, obviously, Oklahoma will be headed down. We're going to be talking to Brent Venables as well coming up on Friday. George will be back for a little bit of a football edition. But, Bob, 9-0. 79-70 victory, a game in which they built out that lead to 19 at one point in Tulsa on Saturday. And just let's start there. Kind of your overall thoughts, because this was a game that everybody kind of circled as a little bit of a litmus test for Porter Moser's group.
Absolutely. They just keep passing one test after another. You look at Arkansas, how long, athletic they are. It's like if OU has truly made the strides that Porter Moser believes in terms of ramping the roster into they are being longer, athletic. Well, the Razorbacks were going to be your first legitimate test. Like USC had a couple guys, but no one like the Hogs. And OU wasn't slowed down at all. They played exactly the way that they played through the other first 8 games of the season. And it's just another reason to start believing that this team is a little bit different.
Javian McCollum leads Oklahoma scores with 20 on Saturday. Rivaldo Suarez with 25 minutes on the afternoon, with Jalen Moore having a little bit of an up-and-down experience. Suarez did get into foul trouble, but he did contribute 13 points on Saturday.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Porter Moser's preached, and we've talked about it here the last couple of weeks too, is that it's going to be someone different every night, and as long as it's someone, you're okay. Last couple games, for whatever reason, Moore's been a little off-kilter, maybe a little too amped up about playing some of these big-time games and not being as smart as he needs to be, and that's where Suarez comes in. He's got all that experience. It showed time and time again. That first half that he had against Arkansas was the best half of basketball he's played this season, and if he plays like that, or even like a version of that, in the Big 12, you feel very confident about what's coming off the bench.
Otega Owe, another really successful afternoon from the field. He goes 6 for 7 with 14 points, second on the team. Rather, one more point than Rivaldo Suarez. I shorted it. My bad. I'm sorry. We talked about this on the Unofficial 40, just in terms of development in a jump shot that, a year ago, Otega Owe was a guy that
cringeworthy.
It was at times, because you knew that as soon as he got the ball, he was going to put his shoulder down and he was going to try to dribble into a bunch of traffic and just draw a foul. Now he's relying a little bit more on the jump shot.
Yeah, game is evolving. Something he's mentioned time and time again, all the work that he put in throughout the course of the summer, but you can just see how he picks his spots. And that's what's been so, nice to see, I'm sure, from Porter and Otega, is that he's not forcing it. He's not being that bull in the china shop, just going after it, trying to get to the hole. He can still do that.
Sure.
And he's still, there's very few guys who are going to be able to stop him when he decides to go that route. But the way that jumper is coming along and the way that he's shooting the three, that's just going to open up even more things for him going down the road.
It's insane to think that he's shooting the ball so well from 3. And, Saturday he was only 2 for 2 from behind the arc, but they seemed to be massive threes at the time.
Yeah, he's really picking the spots well. 9 for 11 this season, and it's like that's someone who's smart enough to know that just because I made 1 or 2 doesn't mean I need to take 5 or 6.
Sure.
That's not who I am. That's not what the team needs. So he hits that 1 or 2, and it might be a backbreaker 3, which I thought one of them was in the second half against the Hogs, and that's enough. And then he's like, okay, now I'll keep being who I am. I don't need to show like I can go like 5 for 7 from 3 if that's not what is required. That's not what the team needs me to do on this night.
On Monday, Oklahoma was rewarded by the Associated Press. They're now up to number 11 in the country. The net rating is at number 14 in the country. And, Andy Katz, who works for the NCAA, does the March Madness poll. He had them at number 9 right now in the country.
I mean, it's
crazy.
It's crazy.
They are a legitimate – how many teams are undefeated in NCAA basketball? 6. And Oklahoma is one of those.
It's one of them. They're going from 25 to 19 to 11. And they just keep passing – every single test that's coming their way, and other teams aren't. Like some's like, well, they haven't had the toughest of games.
Sure.
But games that would have tripped them up for sure in the past are not doing that.
One of the reasons for that is, Bob, it seems, and we'll hear from Porter Moser here in a second, every time, and particularly with these last 2 games over the last week, the win over Providence, 72-51, and then obviously on Saturday, 79-70. Within those games, in the second half, teams have made runs, and they've been able to find answers every time.
It's a trust-building moment. I think, Porter sort of mentioned that word. They were up 12. It's 37-25 at halftime. The Razorbacks are going to make a run. They're not just going to lay down. They cut it down to 6. OU's turning the ball over. Now the BOK crowd starting to go, woo pig suey. They're getting fired up. And Porter decides not to call the timeout. I was like, okay, timeout. You might go one possession too long. It might be by 3 or 4, and you might be in the game again. Instead, he let the players figure it out. They did just that. It got back up to 19. Eric Musselman went crazy. And it was all of a sudden, within a 3-4 minute span, we went from a 6-point nail-biter to a 15-point comfortable cushion throughout the rest of the game.
A game highlighted by 6 technicals. I don't know if I've ever been or covered a game that had 6 different technicals. Obviously, Eric Musselman got the gate for the second time in 3 seasons in Tulsa. After the game, Porter Moser did talk about Oklahoma withstanding some of these runs.
I thought that was a big key. We did know that they've been down and before they keep battling back. So we knew that, and they cut it to I think 6. And then I was debating whether to call a timeout or not. I just trusted it. We tried to get some stops, and then we got it right back up to 10 or 12 again. So those guys have been doing that, bouncing back, and I got to credit our guys to just settling down and getting some stops. But we knew Arkansas was going to keep fighting, coming back, and they did. And then they play so hard, and we knew that at the halftime was a lot of basketball left.
Bob, so often you see teams, and maybe I thought that for like a split second on Saturday, I thought this as I'm sitting down on the baseline at the BOK Center. So many times you see a college basketball coach maybe pick up that technical. He's trying to, get his team motivated a little bit, let them wake up a little bit. For a second, I thought, oh, I could see what he's doing. But then you get the second one, and all of a sudden you're getting 4 free throws on the other end. And it really almost kind of backfired for him because I think Oklahoma, it almost settled everybody down.
It did. And, poise was a big part of that second half. I know Porter wasn't happy with his team's poise either, but they were able to weather that storm a lot better than how Arkansas did. It seemed like they were playing with way too much emotionally, as Porter phrased it Saturday. You can play with emotion, but not emotionally. And you could see that carry over from how Musselman was acting. The team followed his lead, and that was not good.
Yeah, it was not good at all. Jalen Moore had a technical. Rivaldo Suarez had a technical, as well as Otega Owe had a technical. I think Porter even said after the game, he's probably never been a part of a game that's had 6 technicals, and certainly a game in which 3 players from his team each had one.
We're not going to say it's swag, but it's a little confidence. Like,
I think that's okay.
We know we belong here. We're not going to back down from what you're not going to bully us. And if we pick up a T in the process, that's fine. But we are going to bully the bully, and that's what they did Saturday.
Musselman did get ejected from the game, but I thought it was really interesting, Bob, and this has kind of become a theme. We talked about Sam Godwin and how he's complimented John Hughley last week on the Hoops Report. This week, let's go to Eric Musselman first and hear what he had to say on Sam Godwin.
They're really well coached. They play really hard. They understand their roles. I'm not in their locker room. It looks like they accept their roles. They looked connected. They play really good defense. They're very physical on the backboards. In my opinion, they have, Godwin's his role of being a great complementary piece, he's one of the best in college basketball at going vertical. He's one of the best players at not needing the ball in his hands to affect the game. So really, really impressed with him, in particular with his demeanor on the court. He, in my opinion, he really excels at his role. And you're talking about, a guy who had 7 points. But I think he's phenomenal at what he does and what he gives them.
It's pretty incredible talking about a guy that played 24 minutes on Saturday. He attempted 3 field goals. He made 4 free throws to total the 7 points, 4 rebounds, had an assist, had a steal. And what he's doing right now, and you look at the analytics stuff that was put out there, he's leading the country in offensive rebounding efficiency, I believe. It's truly incredible kind of what he's been able to turn into. We're talking about a guy that walked on from Wofford.
Yeah, there's like, a little charity case here. He's just coming back home, kind of be a practice player.
We talked about this a year ago on the Unofficial 40, just in terms of like, would he have been better served maybe going to Central Oklahoma or something? I mean, this guy's playing major Division I basketball right now.
And Porter Moser has said this a couple times, like, oh, this guy put on this weight. He put on all this weight during off season. He's such a different player. And I was like, no, he's really. I don't know what weight you're talking about. He's still the same guy. When he said about Godwin, it's actually true. You can tell how much stronger he is, how much more comfortable he is, and just again how content he is with his role, not trying to do too much, playing within himself. The picks that he set are just incredible. They're just leading to wide open opportunities for his teammates, and then his ability to attack the offensive glass, which has been pointed out, and not only to get the board, but then to finish. That's something he does very well. Like, he catches it, keeps it high, and he's able to go up there and try to finish. But when he's not in foul trouble, he can go a strong 20 to 25, maybe 30 minutes on a given night. But he gives you all he's got for every minute he's in, and the team kind of feeds off of that.
I think that you look at, it might have been the first bucket that Oklahoma scored in the game, but he set a pick for Javian McCollum. McCollum rolls and then found him for an easy lay-in, I believe, or if I remember correctly. But that is, kind of a little bit of a vision, I would imagine, of what Porter Moser has wanted for a long time in terms of what he is. And, John Hughley still played 15 minutes and was very serviceable in his time on Saturday. I know that they didn't have Trayvon Brazil. He only played 15 minutes in the game. And Armando Bacot, we'll get to North Carolina here at the end of the program. He's waiting in the wings. That's kind of the big test for that pair down low.
It is, and the thing is, you can't get caught up on, what was Sam's numbers, what was John's numbers. It's both of them combined. That's all Porter's looking at, is like, what did the 5 position give me on this night? And it does, it doesn't have to be, 10 and 10 from both of them. If you get 20 and 10 combined, that's efficiency. That's going to get the job done on a lot of nights. And next Wednesday, of course, will be one of the bigger nights where we'll know exactly where this duo stands. But, they had Oduro with Providence, was a back-to-the-basket player. You had Arkansas with all the length and athleticism. So they've been able to handle different pieces going up against them. And so their confidence has got to be at an all-time high.
I would imagine, as much as we're going to talk about the matchup inside with Armando Bacot next week in Charlotte at the Jordan Classic, kind of the eyes of, at least for me, the college basketball world, if you will, for one night will be on Javian McCollum going against a backcourt from North Carolina that's obviously very talented.
Yeah, it seems like with every passing game, we're like, can Javian do it again?
Sure.
Can he figure it out? And I was like that. I was like, with Arkansas' size, he's going to get bottled up. We're going to see Grant Sherfield 2.0 where he can't really figure out how to create for himself or get space. And the first 10 minutes seemed like him learning on the job or figuring out within the span of the game, what do I need to do to get myself open, to get my teammates open. And then once he did, the floodgates opened. That offense was terrific. He was able to still get his, and you can just tell that, when he gets it going, the rest of those guys kind of relax a little bit, breathe easier, and the whole team, that offense just flows so much better when he's in control.
20 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists against Arkansas in a team-high 34 minutes for Javian McCollum, and he continues to be the guy. Porter Moser, Sam Godwin talked about it after the game.
I think he had a big 3, and he might have had a 2 as well.
I think he
Drew a foul. Drew a foul, had 2, so he had 5 points in that. Yeah, that 3, those are big because they're, they're in their locker room because they're a great program. I mean, look, you don't get what you've done without knowing that there's 20 minutes left. They came back and they did what we thought, and then for him to hit a 3 like that, score 5 straight, shows us how much he means to us, and those were big points when they were making a run to start the half.
Yeah, I mean, he controls the tempo of every game. He's the head of our snake offensively, and he's a great leader for us. But, I mean, it's just the work he puts in every day. It's not really a surprise to any of the guys in the locker room. Like, we see him getting shots before practice, after practice. Like, this dude just loves the game. So seeing him do what he does is really not a surprise to us.
This part right here, as he's talking a little noise to the crowd, to the Arkansas crowd, that was kind of one of those moments that I go, okay. When you go to the Fog, when you go to, wherever, the Moody Center against Texas, we'll see. Long way to go. And, obviously next Wednesday is going to be a much bigger, much stronger test than what Oklahoma's probably seen up to now. But those were kind of one of those moments that I go, all right, he might be able to fit in here in the Big 12 coming from Siena.
He just doesn't seem like he's afraid of the moment, which is very refreshing to see because how many times, go back, Elijah Harkless, go back to Sherfield, like, there's 3 seconds on the shot clock. Well, someone's got to shoot.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to. Someone has to. So those guys would just chunk it up where he kind of relishes that moment. But his ability to facilitate and be a playmaker has actually, they haven't been in that position all too often where they're in desperation mode. And it's been just tremendous, I'm sure, for the staff to see him be the guy they thought. Because I think that was a problem with the first 2 years. You brought in guys, you're like, well, if he is the same player or a little bit better than where he was at his previous stop, we're going to be really good. And those guys just didn't pan out. They were just a little bit worse than what you were hoping, where McCollum is clearly a little bit better. And now can he keep it up?
And I certainly think that, Javian's been really good, but there are so many guys around him, maybe more so, obviously more so, than what those predecessors had at the point guard position.
And, that goes to what Moser mentioned all the way back in October. It's just the way they concentrated on the portal in the spring to bring in the right guys. Instead of fighting it, they embraced it. We're seeing it with Waldo Suarez, with Trey Darthard. When you've got that experience, that production coming off the bench instead of like a true freshman that's trying, like, I hate to put it this way, but this would be like where Caden Cooper's coming off the bench and struggling to try to find his way as like a 6th or 7th guy.
You saw Los have to kind of be put into that position a year ago.
Exactly. And that Arkansas game last year was actually a little bit of his coming out party.
Sure.
It's where we realized, wait, Los is a starter, and he's going to stay a starter. Like, he can handle this, but that's not always easy for a true freshman to do. And this year they're not asking them. They're like, we've got the experience off the bench, and they are more than happy to come off the bench right now, and it is working.
9-0, Bob, and I think you're moving forward. You got 3 games left in the non-conference slate, you got 4 games left in the non-conference slate. Coming up on Saturday, 8 o'clock tip-off, a late tip-off against Green Bay at the Lloyd Noble Center. Graduation weekend in Norman, which makes for the kind of, I guess, awkward Saturday night tip-off for a non-conference game. But at the same time, you do have the big one coming up against North Carolina. You got 2 cupcakes on the back end of that with Central Arkansas and Monmouth. And then you roll into Big 12 play. With everything that comes, say that they are able to get to a 13-1. Say they get beat in Charlotte in the Jordan Classic against North Carolina next Wednesday. You're still going to have a very high level of expectation going into conference play, which everybody knows is going to be quite the gauntlet in the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, if you're 12-1 going into conference play, you look at getting 8 conference wins and you're set. I mean, obviously you're going to aim for a heck of a lot more than that, but you just know that grind's going to catch up with you, and it's about how quickly you can bounce back. You're going to see teams go through like 3-4 game spiels where they just don't have it, and you just got to snap out of it. You just got to forget it and start playing better. And we'll see what happens when this team actually hits adversity. We've seen it in game when they've been able to figure it out.
Right.
But what if they can't figure it out, and then how quickly do they bounce back when they get back to practice and try to get back on a winning track?
Sure. When you lose that home game to whomever, and then you're having to go to an Ames, or you're having to go to Manhattan or Lawrence or wherever, those weak stretches in the Big 12 it seems like, and I'm sure that a bunch of people in the Big East realize this as well. It's kind of the same difference in that you could have a really, really bad week. You just can't let it compound on one another. And, I think that that's what's been kind of the bugaboo for Oklahoma and Porter Moser over the first 2 seasons is when things started sliding down the track, it got really hard to get it back on.
Yeah, because they'd have like these 3 or 4 game losing streaks. One big win after that.
Sure.
But then not another one. Then it'd be like another 2 game losing streak. It's like we would see the glimpses. I mean, you could even go back to last year. You blow out Kansas State and TCU at home. We know what they did against Bama. But then you would lose at home to OSU and Texas Tech. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. You've got to be able to win the games that you're supposed to. You got to serve at home and then figure out a way to get some on the road. And we think so far that this year's team is going to be able to do just that.
Javian McCollum knows those expectations are coming. He talked about it after the game on Saturday.
That's what we want. We want to be the best. We want to beat the best. I mean, that's what you want to ask for. That's what it takes to win a national championship. You want that target on your back. You want to go out there with knowing that those teams respect you at a high level because we're going out there competing at a high level every night.
A target on your back.
Who did?
And national championship said in the same sentence, talking about an Oklahoma basketball team that, somewhat looked all but dead the first 2 years under Porter Moser. I think that, it should be said, too, it's early, but you are starting to get to, how much longer can you say, well, it's early?
Right.
It seems like you're almost a quarter into the season now. You're 9-0. You got conference play right around the corner, Bob. In your mind, have you taken that next step with expectation after beating Providence, after beating Arkansas, or is it still kind of wait and see because the Big 12 is going to be so tough?
It's a wait and see for that, and because, as I was saying before we started, the teams you beat.
Bob.
No, they're not as good as what they were supposed to be.
Iowa's struggling.
They had a 2-loss week last week. USC, all the talk about Bronny coming back, but they lost Sunday against Long Beach State.
Second home loss of the year in Los
Exactly.
Angeles.
So it's like, those games are supposed to bolster your resume aren't coming through just yet. Now, they won't hurt OU because there's nothing they can do about it, but you're almost, is it smoke and mirrors at this point? That's why we're so looking forward to North Carolina. And if you want to watch Tar Heels, they play Kentucky Saturday. That'll give you a good idea as well as what you're getting ready for next Wednesday.
You should be able to get through Green Bay on Saturday. I think their net rating was 240 as of taping this afternoon. And so it really is. It's been a pleasant surprise. And I think that one of the things that you look at, whether it be any of the new guys, I'm really excited about Los Uzon and Otega Owe as they have kind of made their way into, really truly veterans after having been thrown into the mix. And what Owe's giving you on the offensive end, Bob, it's just, I don't know, it's really exciting to see. You kind of start thinking, for me at least, you think, well, his brother's a hell of an athlete playing for the Ravens. I can only imagine that this kid's going to continue to get better with that in mind and thinking also, these guys were top 100 recruits.
They were, and they showed a lot of mental toughness. I think we'll probably revisit that as the season keeps going, but what last year was like for them as true freshmen, and it's not just about the playing time, but it's about seeing loss after loss after loss and just trying to figure out, and they're like, man, what is going on? How can we get out of this funk that we're in? And just the way they mentally stuck with it. Obviously, they are both adamant, hey, we never thought about the portal. We weren't giving up on Moser. We loved where this thing was going, and we wanted to be the ones that were driving it, steering it in the right direction, and they're clearly doing just that.
It seemed, I think we talked about this as well, final thought before we get out of here, Bob. It just seems like everybody, and you never know how everything's going to come together in terms of the transfer portal, but it seems like, and everything's going well. Like you said, they haven't had a whole lot of adversity, real adversity so far, but it seems like everybody really kind of feeds off one another. And, that's a special, those are the types of teams that when you look up in March, you go, yeah, they don't really have just necessarily a superstar, but they do have 7, 8, 9 guys that on a given night could end up being a guy.
And that's also a credit to Moser, who's been able to recognize within the game, this guy doesn't have it tonight. I got to go with him. You look back at Saturday, Jalen Moore didn't have it. Suarez did.
Sure.
So he rode with Suarez, and Suarez was able to do what he did. There's going to be nights where Moore does it, and that's okay. That's just the way it's going to roll. So don't be down on someone if they have an off game or an off week. That's just the way it's going to work. You're not going to have all 8 guys playing at an elite level. You get 3 or 4 and just get some complimentary pieces, that's going to be more than enough. And the players have done a good job of recognizing it, and the staff has done a good job of realizing this is who is going to take us home tonight.
A lot of fun coming up here on the hardwood for Oklahoma. Real quick before we get out of here, Soonerscoop.com YouTube viewers, we got a really special exclusive offer for you. Soonerscoop.com, 2 months, all you got to do is pay $1. I mean, that's about as good as it gets with everything that is out there. The promo code OU1, 2 months, $1, OU1. And, like we said, Bob, a really good time with all the transfer portal stuff that's going on. Oklahoma ramping up into bowl practice for the Alamo Bowl coming up on December 28th. And, we'll be talking to Brent Venables as well tomorrow. So, everything that's out there with the Caden Green stuff. We did a show on that yesterday with George Stoyle. We talked about it today with Josh and Carrie as well on the unofficial 40. And, it's December. Sometimes it seems like it's a down month, but right now it seems like this is about as busy as it's been in quite some time with, nearly a top 10 team in basketball and then all the football happenings here in Norman. For Bob Przybylo, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We'll see you next time.